Can you guess what will be the first question from a Russian-speaking person?
Is it about my last name by chance?
Yes, yes, correct. So it is pronounced Krawczyk, right?
Yeah, Krawczyk. I in 2017, I was in Pilsen and competed with the Ukrainian team, and I got drug tested at the same time as the Ukrainian team. And when we were waiting for to give our sample for the drug testing, they saw my ID, my driver's license, and they told me that it was pronounced Kravchik,
Hmm.
and that's the best interpretation of it I've gotten because I have a lot of people, they tell me that it's Polish, and I've been told my whole life that it's Ukrainian. So
If we say Krawczyk, it looks sounds like probably Czech Republic, and in Ukrainian we say Kravchuk.
Kravchuk, okay.
Do you have any roots from former USSR?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. As far as I know, yeah, my like great grandfather, like on my dad's side, was Ukrainian. So I think the name came from the Ukraine. It's something that I'm really curious about actually, and should probably look more into, but I just haven't.
We can do a quick check, and and we will decide if you are if you have Ukrainian roots or not. Do you like borscht?
Yes, yeah, I do. Yeah, a lot of sausage and pierogi growing up.
Test is finished. Yeah, you have Ukrainian roots.
Perfect.
Okay. So as for the project where you criticize technique, so
Hmm.
it's interesting. I did a similar project, so I even didn't know that you are doing the same.
Okay, nice.
In my opinion, there are no that many mistakes in powerlifting, so that after 3 or 4 videos, we started repeating the same over and over again.
Oh
So,
yeah.
do you agree that number of flaws are very limited, since powerlifting is not that difficult compared to Olympic weightlifting, for example?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think I find myself because every week we put out a Form Check Friday video on the Calgary Barbell YouTube channel. It is a lot of the same stuff. It is definitely a lot of the same stuff. I think there's a finite or like a limited number of things that people mess up, and a lot of the times, even if things look really different, uh, often it's a lot of the same reasons and the same cues even that help lifters overcome that. And that's maybe one of the more um, complicated parts of trying to fix technique is coming up with a lot of different ways to say the same thing because only one of the ways of saying it is going to actually fix it for the lifter. So if we're thinking about, if the lifter's having trouble keeping their knees forward in the bottom of the squat, and their hips are shooting up behind them, you have to come up with, maybe 10 different ways of saying, keep pressure on your toes, keep your knees forward, don't let your hips shoot up, keep your butt under the bar. All of these things mean the same thing, but only one of those is going to actually make sense to the lifter. And I think that's the art and the trick to trying to get the technique changed.
Yeah, so because specific words in specific time, so can do big things.
Yeah.
Frequent mistake in deadlift in terms of good lift or no lift is a downward movement, in my opinion. So on the competition, so looks like you suffer from the this flaw as well. So I saw a few deadlifts, and sometimes you get no lift. So what is your explanation why this happens and how to fix it?
So one of the reasons that I think it's happened in the past is positioning off of the floor. I think if I don't get a full extension of my back before I start the lift, that really messes me up at lockout sometimes. One of the other reasons was my shoes. At the time, I switched shoes and it pretty much just stopped happening. So I think I was having balance issues because of the shoes that I was in. And yeah, just slight inconsistencies. I think mostly in positioning and mostly right when I start the lift. If you look at Yeah, 2019 was probably the biggest example of that. I just about didn't get a deadlift at Open Worlds in Dubai because I was having such balance issues. And then my next meet, which would have been March 2020, I nailed all my lifts, pulled 400 kilos. And I think the biggest change there was training a little lighter so that I was able to really practice getting my positioning right every single time, as well as changing my shoes.
Why do you compete in the IPF? Why don't you like to compete in alternative federations?
I think for me, I became involved with our like local federation, our province's federation, the APU, and kind of fell in love with competing because of that federation. And I find the international competition really exhilarating. I have no plans to use drugs, so competing in untested federations, to me, I don't think I would have that same level of competition because honestly, I don't think I'd be able to keep up with untested lifters, and I don't necessarily want to do what I would have to keep up with untested lifters. So for me, the IPF seems like the right place for me to be. It seems like at the international level in the IPF, the lifters are, around my skill level and strength level. At least for now, we'll see with Musaev how much more he's got in the tank. He was looking pretty good there.
By the way, I talked to Konstantin Musaev today, and I told him that I will be talking with you tonight, and he asked me to ask you, will you compete at Worlds this year?
Yes, yes. My plan is to compete at Worlds this year. Yeah.
But that was the first question, and the second question was he wants to know if you're ready to improve your deadlift record, since Konstantin wants to smash it.
Oh, I know. I know. We've had a few conversations about that, and I think that's awesome. I welcome the competition. I am ready to increase the record, and hopefully we can have a good deadlift showdown. I'd look very much forward to that.
By the way, did you know Musaev before the competition in Sweden?
I did kind of. I knew who he was. I saw him pop up on social media, and a lot of the times heading into these bigger competitions, I'll try to get a sense for where my competitors are. Um, I don't think anyone expected him to do as well as he did, because I think this was his first open worlds, right? As an open lifter.
And he was 24 years old.
Yeah, he's a young guy, and I think this was pretty far beyond what he had done in competition previously. So I don't think anybody saw it coming. Not that we didn't expect it or didn't think he was capable of it, but just that nobody really saw it coming, and he really, really did some exceptional lifting. So hats off to him, and all the respect, of course. He lifted phenomenally, and is a great lifter. So I look forward to competing with him again for sure.
Did you notice any interesting things in his technique? How can you describe his technique?
It's tough to say. Like every lift he did looked like he had more left in the tank. So I'd be interested to see what happens if he goes all the way out. But no, his technique was good and clean, and I thought he did a really good job, kind of across all three technically.
We have a Russian deadlift record. Maxim Patinny said it maybe 7 years ago. Musaev tried to smash this record 3 times, competing in Russia, and he wanted to do it in Sweden. But our coach said that no need to do it today. Just let's get total, and next time you will smash what you want.
Yeah, I think that's the smart call. Like Worlds is that was my priority too, was hopefully to make it onto the podium, to place as high as possible. And I think if it came down to a decision between the record and placement at open worlds, it's always placement. So I agree with that call. A lot of the times people don't realize how much strategy there is in powerlifting, especially when it comes down to those last few deadlifts. It really is a numbers game.
As for your deadlift, when you move to 120, so you get some muscles and also some fat, and it
Hmm.
is not good for the deadlift. For bench press and squat, it's very good, but for deadlift, not okay. But still, you didn't lose any kilograms. You even improved your deadlift. Why?
I think it took me a while to kind of relearn the deadlift.
Your technique was changed, right?
Slightly, yeah. I think I had to change some things with how I was deadlifting in order for it to make sense at heavier body weight. And I think once I figured it out, then I was able to keep progressing or at least stay strong. I mean, my biggest deadlifts to date have been as a 120, so I think overall it's helped. But I definitely spent probably 6 months where my deadlift didn't feel very good after moving up in body weight.
So we are very good in at deadlift. So it's genetics or good livers or smart training or something else.
Probably all of those. Probably all of those. But definitely, I've started helping my brothers do some powerlifting. My two younger brothers, and I think it took my one brother about 8 months, less than a year, to go from not really lifting at all to pulling 230. So I think there's definitely some genetic component to being able to deadlift. But yeah, it's just it's kind of been the lift that has always made sense for me. And yeah, it's definitely, kind of my thing.
So you said about your two brothers, and I understood that you are quite a cruel guy because you destroyed your life and you want to destroy their lives.
Yeah, yeah,
It's quite cruel.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, so they came to me, they asked for it. They wanted me to help them power lift a little bit. I don't know that they'll compete, but I think they just kind of do powerlifting to get in shape and that kind of stuff.
We can see from the tables that bench press is your weakest exercise.
Yeah, it definitely is.
What do you do to fix it, or just you keep it and just relax
Uh, Gaining weight has been a big thing. Um,
for the bench press?
yeah, yeah. So I got up to 200 kilos raw in 2020 and then kind of messed my shoulders up. So for me, I think the thing is to get the right amount of work without doing too much work because it's a really fine line. I need to do a lot of work to make my bench get better, but it's very easy for me to do too much and then I end up hurting my shoulders. So just finding that right balance for me has been a big thing.
John Haack is not too heavy, right? But he has enormous bench press.
Yeah, yeah, I think he benched 267 and a half on the weekend.
What can you tell about John Haack? So is he strong enough or not really?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I have the authority to tell John Hack if he's strong enough. I think he's one of the best powerlifters out there right now. He's incredibly impressive.
What do you think is the secret, the main secret? Just genetics?
No, I don't think it's just genetics. I think he's certainly gifted genetically. But I'm sure if you look at his training and his nutrition and his sleep, I think he just does everything right. You know what I mean? He probably eats um, just the right amount of food every day, and he probably sleeps 8+ hours every night, and he probably trains very consistently and very smart. And I think a combination of doing all of those things right for a very long time, plus the elite genetics, I think is kind of how he ends up where he is.
Do you think he can still progress in each lift, or he just reached his limits?
Mm, I guess time will tell. I guess time will tell. I'd love to see him, go up another weight class and put another 100 kilos on his total. But who knows? Who knows if that's something he wants to do or something he will choose to do? I don't know. I don't know John Hack. I don't know that we've ever really spoken or anything, but
He looks very differently compared to another lifters. Yeah, so he is
Hmm.
just very unique guy, and if he would send his attempts to you for your program criticize critique technique, I think he you will ruin him. Yeah, his technique isn't perfect.
I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean, like especially looking at like there's a very, I think, specific kind of technique that a lot of like Eastern European lifters have. A lot of Russian, Ukrainian lifters, I think, have a kind of look to their lifting. And I definitely think that John Hack's technique across the lifts is very far from that. So I can see, I can see why you might not like the way his lifts look, but you can't deny he's moving the weight. So I don't know. I think he's just figured out a way that his body moves to move the most amount of weight. And I'm not convinced that if his technique was different, that he would necessarily be stronger. I think he'd probably have to lift a lot less for a long time to change his technique. And I don't know if it would be worth it. That would be the question I would have is at the end of it all, does he actually move more weight? I don't know.
A few months ago, I uploaded the interview with John Haack, and he said very interesting thing that lifters think too much about technique, but all they need just to get stronger.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think even in the videos where I'm critiquing people's technique, I think I try to make a balance between understanding that people's bodies are going to move differently, and that that's okay if it doesn't look, as good as, a specific kind of technique. But the most important thing is that you find a technique that works for you, that isn't painful, that allows you to progress, that allows you to, stay away from injuries and pains and stuff like that. So I think there's a balance. I think that if we completely ignore technique, I think a lot more people are going to get stuck lifting a lot less weight. But I think if we focus too much on technique, I think that can really hold people back as well.
Can you agree or disagree that technique is extremely important if you lift equipped, but not that important if you lift raw?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that for sure. I would agree to a point. I think that small errors are made bigger by equipment. So I think if you make a small mistake in equipment, it becomes a big mistake because there's a lot more, there's a lot less room for error in equipment, is what I would say. Small errors become big, whereas I think lifting classic, if you make a small error, you can more easily fix it, or kind of muscle through a lift that you mess up the execution of.
Lifting heavy weights is heavy shit. So where do you get motivation to go further and lift heavy and heavier? What makes you continue?
Guys like Konstantin Musaev, um, that's a good motivator. Like I said, I love competition. I love competing. I love, seeing what other people can do and trying to measure myself against other people. So a lot of my motivation is to compete, because that's the best feeling for me, is to go out and have a competition and lift against the best in the world. And that makes me feel really good. So, um, because of that, I mean, my whole life right now kind of revolves around lifting, in terms of, being a coach in my day job, and making YouTube content, and trying to like educate other powerlifters. So it's really become a lot more than just competing, but at the most deep level, it's the competition that keeps me going.
What's your education? Where did you graduate it from?
So I did a 2-year university program in fitness. and personal training. So through that, we went through anatomy and physiology and strength training and all that kind of stuff. And then since then, I've kind of just been learning on my own with books and YouTube and talking to coaches and podcasts and all that kind of stuff.
Is it difficult to earn money being in powerlifting compared to, say, bodybuilding fitness?
Probably. I think there's less of a difference now. I think powerlifting has become a lot more popular. I think there's a lot more room in the industry for coaches, especially good coaches. You know, if you're going to do a good job, I think there's plenty of room in the industry. But yeah, I don't think that we're necessarily at the point where we have the same kind of appeal as bodybuilding. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because we all have a bit of a belly. We don't have six packs, some of us, anyways. But yeah, it's tough to say. I think I think powerlifting has grown a lot. I started lifting 10 years ago in 2012, and at that point, where I'm from, at least in Canada, was not a lot of lifting, not a lot of lifters, and especially not a lot of female lifters. So the sport has grown a lot in how many people are competing, and especially in how many women are competing. So it's really cool to see the sport growing so much.
In your opinion, this growth, what were the main reasons of that? So, if we consider the US, so maybe they started going up maybe 7, 8 years ago, and this that growth was unreal. So, what do you think? It just coincidence, or there were some reasons?
I think probably a lot of social media. I think a lot of people seeing lifting on Instagram and seeing that people are doing that, and then getting information from YouTube and being able to just pick it up and learn it. When I got into powerlifting, there were, I don't know, four websites. There was Elite FTS. There were a bunch of forums where people were translating Shaco's stuff and running a lot of Shaco's stuff. And I think there was like Jim Wendler, and that was kind of it. There wasn't a whole lot of information out there. So I ordered, the Jim Wendler book from whatever weird website, and it took 3 months to get here. And then I started powerlifting based on that. But nowadays, you can just go online and you'll find 15 websites with 100 programs each and 25 different YouTube videos on, every single mistake you could ever make in the squat. And I think it's just the barrier for entry is a lot less. So it's a lot easier to just decide, hey, I want to try this out, and then go do it. Whereas it used to be you really had to kind of seek and look around for the information. And I think a lot of people maybe didn't bother because it was so difficult to find information about.
And I think one more reason is that powerlifting is requires not too much to train. You need just barbell and racks and bench,
Yeah.
right? And you can do it on your own in your garage, right?
Hmm.
Powerlifting, why it is a good kind of sport? Maybe it's not true. Maybe it's bad kind of sports. Injuries, too much time, not any. There is no any profit from powerlifting. Just pain and waste of time.
I mean, you're not wrong. That's an interesting perspective, but you're not wrong on an objective level. I think it's a great sport. I think it's a great opportunity for people to work on themselves and to see what happens when you put work into something. Powerlifting is very, very objective. So you have a number for your squat, and then you put in a bunch of work, and then you have a higher number for your squat. And I think that progress and how easy it is to measure that progress is one of the things that really gets people hooked. And then once you get into competing in powerlifting, I think because there's no money and because it's just pain, I think the people that do it really, really love it. So it's awesome to go and compete and be around these other people who really, really love it, and to like kind of understand each other and understand why we're so addicted to the pain and no money and all the things that powerlifting is. So yeah, I think there's some camaraderie. The community is a big thing, but yeah, I love the sport despite its shortcomings.
As for injuries, when does an injury become inevitable? So, what is the threshold, if it makes sense? How many kilograms or years or another reasons?
I wish there was a way to predict that. I think some lifters will go entire careers without big injuries. Like again, like John Haack, I don't think has had any big injuries. He's probably had some little stuff. I think he tweaked his hamstring at the competition on the weekend, but that's probably something that'll be fine in a month or two. The way that I like to think about it is that there's sort of like the start where people are untrained, they don't lift weights at all, and I think there's a long ways you can go where it's actually going to make you healthier to lift weights, to get strong, to do something like powerlifting. And then beyond sort of the next cutoff, once you start pushing past that for performance and you're trying to compete and you're trying to go to national championships, that I think is probably where things start to get, I wouldn't say dangerous, because if you look at the injury rates in powerlifting versus other sports, like it's objectively a lower incidence of injuries, but definitely the risk increases the more you try to perform at a high level. So I think for somebody like my brothers who just want to do this to get in shape and to build some muscle, they're just going to get healthier from powerlifting. But if they decide they want to compete and they want to try to win meets and they want to go to nationals, then we're starting to manage maybe some more risk, I think.
And also, I think drugs can be the reason of getting injured, right? So, as an IPF lifter, so you know nothing about drugs, but probably
Uh,
you read anywhere, you heard from anyone. So, do you agree that if someone start taking drugs too early, it can be the reason to get injury?
I think potentially. I've definitely so I've spent my career lifting with lifters, some of whom use drugs and compete in other federations. So I've been around it. I've been around lifters who go that route, and I think there is maybe a correlation between people who want to use drugs to enhance their lifting and a higher injury rate. And I think it would be interesting to see if it's actually the drugs or if it's people who want, because I'm imagining in my head, if a lifter chooses to use drugs, they're willing to do more. They're willing to like go further. They're willing to take more risk to be stronger. And I think that same attitude comes through in their training. So they might train harder, they might train heavier, they might train more often, they might, put more weight on the bar as opposed to less. And I think those kinds of things also will play into a higher risk for injury. So I think there might be some sort of self-selection when it comes to people who choose to use drugs to get stronger that are also going to maybe train in a more risky fashion, if that makes sense.
But if we consider a person who don't doesn't want to compete in the IPF, he doesn't care about test to be tested or not to be tested, and if he just started doing powerlifting, what is your advice? How long should he train without drugs, and then if he wants, start taking peds?
Oh boy. I don't know if I have a good recommendation for that.
Because we have
Uh,
a universal advice, so train clean as long as you can. But when you reach your limit, so you can try.
I mean, yeah, if that's the route somebody wants to go. I heard, I think it is, do you know who Ben Pollock is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him post something on his story the other day, and I can't remember whose quote it was, but they said, if people don't think that you're on drugs before you start using drugs, then you should wait. Like basically you should be accused of being on drugs before you take them. Was his metric. So I'll just pass that along. I don't know that I have a recommendation. I think people should kind of just do whatever they want to do. Um, and hopefully people stay healthy and make smart decisions. A bit of a stroke to the ego. Um, I think it's also, and I don't know how attitudes differ between like North America and Europe, or like what the sort of public outlook is on that kind of stuff. But I think in North America, if somebody accuses you of being on drugs, I think there's also an element of they're calling you a cheater in a sense. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of questioning your character a little bit. So I think yeah, it's like a kind of a nice compliment because obviously they think you're big and strong and jacked or whatever, but they're also like, I don't think you're above cheating. So yeah, I like it's kind of a backhanded compliment.
I should say that you started doing powerlifting pretty late.
I
So
did, yeah.
were you involved in different sports before?
Yeah, I grew up playing football or soccer. Kind of didn't really play sports for a number of years. I played in a metal band, and I bartended, and I partied a lot. And then I kind of found powerlifting when I was trying to get healthy from not feeling so good after bartending and partying and playing in a metal band for too long.
That's why you decided to go to the IPF with drug test because you had too much drugs and being partied.
Maybe, maybe I had had enough of it by that point.
So that's why you get clean for the
Yeah.
rest of your life. Okay, and so you decided just to get healthier, and so what you have done.
Yeah, so I decided basically that I was always a skinny guy. My first competition was at I don't know, 83 kilo, in the 83 kilo weight class anyways. So I think when I started lifting, I probably weighed about 70 kilos when I first started lifting. So I was a pretty skinny guy. And the whole reason I started lifting was just because I didn't want to be skinny anymore, and I wanted to try to get healthy. And then I power lifted, and after I did my first meet, I was just hooked. I was hooked. It was all I wanted to do. It was all I wanted to talk about. I started coaching, and uh, actually, I didn't start coaching right away. I started working with like the general population. I started helping people get fit, and working with middle-aged moms and whoever wanted to go to the gym for whatever reason, and did that for a number of years before I started coaching powerlifting. And I think that really helped a lot. But yeah, I just kind of fell in love with the sport right away. Um, I really enjoyed lifting weights, and I at some point decided I really didn't want to be a bodybuilder, but I wanted to compete in something. And I did my first powerlifting meet, and that was it.
You have pretty cool YouTube channel with very professional videos. So
Thank you.
could you tell us a little bit more about it? How many people in your team? What do you do for that? Only a person in front of camera or anything else?
Um, so we started the YouTube channel, I guess it would have been like 2015, 2016. Me and Dylan, who's my business partner, and he's the guy who films everything and edits everything and makes it look so good and professional. I basically just talk and lift weights, and he does all the hard work. We started the YouTube channel. Basically, I just wanted to do some videos on my clients that I was coaching for powerlifting, and I wanted to show them off, and I wanted to show how strong they had gotten and how good they were. And we did a few of those videos, and Dylan was actually filming himself on a separate channel, and kind of came to the conclusion or discovered that people didn't really care because he wasn't strong enough, but he was really good at making the videos and editing the videos. So he approached me and said, well, you're really strong. You're competing, at the IPF Worlds and this kind of stuff. He's like, people would care more if we filmed your training. So why don't I film it and edit it, and we'll use your training, and we'll kind of like partner up to do this. And that was, yeah, I think the first videos we ever did for like the Calgary barbell that it is now were done leading into 2016 Classic Worlds in Texas. So that was kind of the start of the channel, and then it's grown from there.
Making good videos, filming, editing, light, travel, it quite expensive. And as far as I know, you were this guy named Dylan. Yeah, he was filming in Sweden, in Dubai as well. Yeah.
So he didn't actually come to those meets. What we did was we had people film it. We paid people to film, and then they sent us the footage, just the raw, unedited footage, and then Dylan went through and put it all together and made the videos. So we worked with SBD Taiwan in Dubai. They were really, really great. They had two or three cameramen out. They covered all the angles. They did a great job. And then in Sweden, we worked with SBD USA, who again did a great job, as well as White Lights Media. So depending on where the competition is, sometimes Dylan will come, but if there's already media coverage that we can just pay somebody to do at the competitions, then we'll have them do it and send us all the raw footage, and then Dylan will take it and color it and edit it and put the music behind it and all that kind of stuff.
I saw on your Instagram that you are quite a fan of beer.
Hmm. Yeah,
Is
I
it
love
okay?
beer.
Is it okay for powerlifting, or it makes your workouts harder because of beer, especially if you drink one day before the hard workout?
So I think as long as you don't have too many beers, you're probably fine.
How many bottles of beer is too much?
I think anything beyond like, I don't know, four or five in a night, you're maybe getting to the point where you're the thing with like drinking a bunch of beer isn't even necessarily that you're going to be hungover. It's that if you're balancing your nutrition, you drink a bunch of beer, that's a bunch of food that you can't eat, right? Or you're just going to gain a bunch of weight. So I think you kind of have to work it into your nutrition plan so you can have a beer and still eat all your food. But yeah, I'll have a beer the night before a competition. I have a beer, usually one beer, almost every night, just because I really enjoy it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it affects me negatively at all. But I think if I had six beers every night, that might that might make things tough.
But scientists tell that it affects your skin, your kidneys, your liver, but probably the question is volume.
I've also heard the recommendation to, if you're going to have alcohol, try to have some protein around the same time. And that can negate some of the potential bad effects of the beer. So, yeah, I usually have my beer when I get home, and then I'll have another protein shake or something before bed. And I'll eat my meals and I'll eat, good healthy foods. And I think if there's a tiny little impact from having a beer, I'll just deal with it. That's okay.
Why I'm asking, because I'm also a big fan of beer, but for me it makes my weights bigger because when you drink beer, your appetite is increases a lot. So I try to fight with beer, but beer is stronger than me. So
Beer wins.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
In 2019, you made quite a huge jump and moved to 120. So why just changed your diet or started lifting differently?
It was just nutrition. I've been working with Mike Tashir for a long, long time. And I think the reasoning for moving up mostly was I'm pretty tall. And looking at a lot of the competitors in the 105, I was quite a bit taller than them.
How long in centimeters?
I think like 178.
178. In Canada, you use
Yeah.
inches as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we use a little bit of each. Canada's really weird like that. We use pounds and kilos. We use feet and inches for height, but we use kilometers for road distance. It's really weird.
So you and your coach decided that it's better to compete in 120.
hmm I looked at the standings from the previous year's Open World Championships because I was competing in equipment, and I looked at my previous best total and what I thought I was capable of. And at the time, it looked like I would place better in the 120s than I would in the 105s. So I went from, I think I placed ninth in 2017 and then placed fourth or fifth in 2019 as a 120. So I was able to climb the rankings a little bit.
Yeah, but still, you didn't cut lots of weight when you were in 105, right? So you didn't have any problems.
I think at my biggest, I was maybe about 108 in the 105s.
Your microcycle consists of 7 days. It's one week, correct?
Yeah,
Microcycle.
yeah. For the most part, I did actually change it to 8 for a little while. So I would train essentially 3 days one week and 4 days the next. Um, for a while there, I would just train every other day. So I generally train pretty specific. I stick with the competition lifts and usually in pretty low rep ranges, pretty heavy most of the time. And then one of the things that I've been doing a lot lately is I do the competition lifts relatively specific, relatively heavy, and then I'll do very non-specific stuff. So I'll leg press for high reps or belt squat, and do things that are not um, that closely related to the competition lift. So I'm kind of um, half my work on like either end of the spectrum and not a lot in the middle. So lately I haven't been doing a lot of things like paused squats or paused deadlifts. Instead, I'll do like a snatch grip RDL or something, and keep it either very specific or very not specific. And that seems to work pretty well for me. I'm still trying to fill out the 120s, still, slowly gaining weight to fill out the weight class. So I think the higher rep, less specific stuff maybe provides some benefit when it comes to hopefully hypertrophy in filling out the weight class. The interesting thing about my programming with Mike is that it really depends. So it's not strictly structured. Monday might be a squat day, it might be a deadlift day. But basically, I train legs, push, and pull on Monday. And on Wednesday, I do push and pull. On Thursday, I do legs and pull. And then Saturday, I do legs, push, and pull. And legs would be either squat or deadlift. And then pull would be some kind of upper back movement. I do a lot of upper back training.
What different in approach to training or competing between Western and Eastern lifters? Eastern Bloc, I mean countries of the former USSR.
I might be a little ignorant to what Eastern training actually looks like. It may have changed a lot over the years, but I think, oh, what was that program? I'm trying to remember the name of a program that I ran that was from a Russian strength coach. It wasn't Shaco. It was another.
Smolov,
No, not Smolov.
Surovetsky, Rogozhnikov,
Surovetsky. That's the one.
Sorovetsky.
Sodovetsky. Yeah, I ran that program like 2013 or 2014. That was a great program. That worked exceptionally well for me. Yeah, so it worked really well. I modified it and put in a little bit of heavier work in the later weeks. But other than that, I ran it as written, and it worked really, really well for me. Um, I think one of the biggest differences, the way I see it, anyways, and you can correct me if I'm misinterpreting Eastern training, but I think Eastern training generally is lighter, and generally is, or at least is lighter for more of the training, and is utilizes more volume, more sets, more reps. Whereas I think a lot of Western training is kind of more intense. I think it's more popular in Western training to utilize heavy singles more often, and train closer to competition weights. Um, and Yeah, I think those are probably the biggest differences. I think there's some exercises like a deadlift to the knees, and really putting an emphasis on breaking up the deadlift into two separate movements that Shaco was a big fan of. That I don't think is as big a thing in the Western world. Um, but other than that, I think there's maybe a lot more similarities than anything. I did notice a lot of the Ukrainian lifters almost seem to exclusively deadlift from blocks. They don't do a lot of deadlifting from the floor, which I've always found interesting. But yeah, I think that a good coach is going to be more concerned with what works for the lifter as opposed to trying to make their system fit. Sorry, they're going to try to make their system fit the lifter as opposed to making the lifter fit what they want to do. So yeah, I think it's important to be able to modify things regardless of where you're from.
In your opinion, why Russian lifters are not that successful in raw lifting compared to equipped?
Hmm, that's a good question. I probably don't know enough about Russian lifters to really say, but the way I've heard it described is that I think the way I've heard people talk about it is that classic lifting is maybe less exciting for people in some ways. So I've heard Western lifters say this too, but they'll say that classic competing is basically just training, and open lifting or equipped lifting is competing. So I don't know if there's maybe not as much interest in classic lifting, but if you look at a lot of the Russian lifters that do really well, and Ukrainian lifters that do really well in equipped lifting, I bet if we, you know, put them on the classic platform, I bet they do exceptionally well. So I think it's more a matter of choice, and maybe in the Eastern culture, equipped lifting is seen as more elite or more prestigious. So maybe less lifters want to compete classic. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
way it is? Yeah.
yeah. Since you are not only a good YouTuber but also a good coach, so can you give a quick advice for each lift, squat, bench press, and deadlift? So if we fix these mistakes or if we implement this advice, we can do better.
So I think if I had to give one tip for the squat, it would be to try to make sure that the pressure of your weight is even in your feet while you're squatting. I think that's something a lot of people mess up, especially when they're new, is they'll be too far forward on their toes or too far back on their heels. So I think if lifters can get that pressure nice and even between the front and the back of their foot and maintain it through the squat. Another thing I see a lot is lifters hit the bottom of the squat and then they pop forward on the toes, and then they go back on the heels and the hips shoot up. So I think if you can just even that out and keep it consistent through the lift, that's probably one of the number one things that people mess up on the squat. On the bench press, I would say it's probably consistent back and shoulder position. I think a lot of lifters will go to press and their shoulders pop up out of position, or their elbows flare too early or too hard. So I think keeping your shoulders in a pretty consistent position from the time you unrack to the time you re-rack, so not losing it between reps or locking out and letting your shoulders go, is a big thing. And then with the deadlift, I think people think too much about hip height, so how it looks in terms of whether your hips are high or your hips are low. And I think the thing that people should be focusing on with the deadlift is putting their hips in a position where there's a lot of tension. So finding hip tightness and hip tension before they start the lift, as opposed to worrying about I need my hips higher or I need my hips lower.
The last question is, what is the best kind of sports in the world ever?
I mean, I've got to say powerlifting, right? That's you teed that one up for me, right?
That's correct answer. So,
Okay.
Bryce, thank you very much for your time. It was very interesting to talk to
Thank you for
you,
having me.
and very interesting answers, not common answers. It's very
Okay.
good. Thank you very much
I
from
hope
me
I
and
hope I don't get a bunch of Russian hate for answering wrong.
no, everything will be okay. Thank you
Good.
from myself and from Russian audience as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.